Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Tonight we've got a fantastic guest, a professional footballer who's just played his 500th league game recently, which is an amazing achievement. He's played for Bury, Hamilton, Tranmere, Preston, and now Northampton. He's played for Northern Ireland under 19 and 21s. He's been there, done that. To play 500 league games is an amazing achievement. I'm sure he'll get to another 500 more. David Buchanan, welcome to the show. Good to have you on board.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Okay, so first question, David, this evening is: at what point growing up did you decide you want to be a professional footballer? A lot of young people watching this evening, looking for some insights and some ideas. At what point did you decide that that's it, I'm going to be a pro footballer?
I think I started. Obviously, I started playing at school like everyone does with their friends and stuff in primary school, really. But if you think, I've thought about it I'd say when I was 14, 15, where I really thought this is something that I know I've got a talent, because I was in like the best player in the team in school. I was having scouts coming, watching me play games for school and my Sunday league team. And at the time I was playing for Bolton Wanderers, who was in the Premier League at the time. And I used to get a special day off school once a week to go and train with their like youth team. So I think around that age, it was like 14, 15, where I thought, you know what, I've got a talent here, and I'm gonna really push and try hard and see where it takes me.
That's really interesting stuff, and I'm sure there's young people out there thinking professional football fantastic. And I think that for me, I've always maintained, David, that there's the people like the idea of being a pro footballer, the ones who actually love being a pro football. I mean, you get people out there, they've got this perception of football being fancy cars and, you know, the lifestyle they see on TV. And I know people aren't naive. I know they're well aware it's not like that for everybody. But I truly think, from my experience of being a coach in the game, there's certain players that they like the idea of it. Training's a different story. And one thing that's always struck me about yourself is the effort you put in. You know, the effort. I don't think people out there will realize how much effort you put in, training-wise, dedication, persistence, and to keep going. And for yourself, what would you say to the young player? I know it's hard to advise people. I'm not looking for any advice, but anyone sort of coming through thinking, okay, I've got the talent. What would you say to them if you could sort of reach out to them and give them any sort of tips that they can, anything they can do?
I'd definitely say, no matter how much talent you've got, the talent doesn't beat hard work. You know, I think for me, I wasn't the most talented in the group by any stretch of the imagination. So I had to do something else to make sure that I stood out. And for me personally, it was always, I wanted to be the fittest. I wanted to be the first in the races. I wanted to, whether it was doing a 2-mile run, whether it was doing a 12-minute run, whatever it was, I wanted to make sure I give everything where I was the best. And for me, I would say to these young players, especially who've got all the talent in the world, I'd say first and foremost, listen to your coaches. It's important. You don't know everything. I'm still learning all the time. As I say, I've been in the game now for 14 years, professional, and I'm still learning off my coaches every day. So I'd say listen. I'd say believe in yourself. Don't accept no for an answer. Don't be afraid to ask questions and question not only yourself, mates, question on why you're doing things. And I think most important, keep that self-belief about yourself, and keep saying to yourself why you're doing it. You've got to have a why you want to be a footballer. What's driving you to want to be, and to be the best you can be the best version of you. That's what I've always tried to be. I've not tried to compete against anybody else in their lifestyle. I've always just tried to be a better version of David Buchanan.
Yes, that's, you know, priceless. I think to come from someone who's been there, done that, and who's doing it at the moment is crucial for me. And I think a lot of people out there that they've got this idea of what it takes to become a professional footballer. They've been there. They've sort of tasted it. They've been there for a short while. A lot of people come and go in the game, but to be in the game 14, 15 years down the road, a pro and still have the same hunger and desire as when you first broke through is a big thing. And how do you keep that motivation up, David? I mean, I think it mustn't be easy to, week in, week out, to be and play 100%. How do you stay? Yeah,
definitely. There's times when you think, is it worthwhile? You get long-term injuries and you have to watch your teammates playing on a Saturday night. You're looking out onto training and you can't see the end goal. Times like that are so difficult when you've got to be mentally strong. And I think people need to realise in any sport really, and in any walk of life, it's a lot to do more mentally than physically. Is football, you've got to, for me, as I keep saying, now I'm 31, my why is different. I've got a young family. So for me every day, now my motivation is my kids, pay my bills, and out there, whether you're a sportsman or and a 23-year-old who he don't care about David Buchanan, no disrespect. He respects me as who I am and what I've done in the game, and I'm his teammate, and we're a family and we love each other and we help each other on and off the pitch. But I want to play on a Saturday afternoon. The other guy wants to play on a Saturday afternoon, and you've got to just make sure that the manager, you're doing everything for the manager to pick you. And if he doesn't, then sometimes that's the case. But you can either sulk and you can either get down and let it beat you, and but that's not how you last in the game for 14, 15 years. The people the top players, your Wayne Rooney's and things, I see the stick he gets, but you can't be at the top from 16-year-old until 32 and break all them records if you're not dedicated and you haven't got the desire to be the best you can be. And after all the setbacks that you get, I just think personally you've got to have that why, and that why has got to be what you go out, and it might be for your mum, it might be to give you to pay bills, it might just be to prove to yourself or to prove to a coach or a school teacher who said that you'd never make it and you should have done this or you should have done that. At the minute, I'm 31 and every day I still wake up and think I've got a young family that I need to provide for, and that's what drives me every day to be the best I can be.
That's interesting stuff, and I think that's crucial for anybody to find their why, what their motivation is, to get up in the morning to train and to put the extra hours in. I think for me, what's interesting there, David, Bolton, it doesn't work out there for one reason or the other. Yep. Premiership club at the time, great club, Bolton. I love the club and it's a fantastic stadium. They're a great family club, and I think that any young player gets released from a Premier League club, the first thing they do is they want to get straight back in the Premier League. And I've always maintained for years, I've always said, you know what, this is my opinion, by the way, the way I see it. I think that first team football is key. I would sooner play first team football in League One, League Two, than be stuck in reserves in a Premiership club for 5 or 6 years and unknown. That's the way I see things. But in saying that, sometimes players, they get released and they struggle to adapt, and I don't know what it is, maybe the motivation, and I think that's key for me. In terms of yourself, you're only a young lad at the time. How did you sort of find the motivation? So, you know what, I'm at League Two club now. How do you sort of get yourself at that age to get motivated again and say, I'm going to pick myself up and break through the professional football?
I think it is difficult. I think you're right. I think, I know for a fact, I've seen a lot, as you say, who have been the next big things at Manchester United, at Liverpool, Everton, Bolton, etc. And for one reason or another, it don't work out. And then, to get the biggest thing is it's a culture shock for these young lads, because at these big Premier League clubs, you've got everything laid on a plate for you. The owners have got millions of pounds. You've got the best of facilities. You've got like yourself at your disposal every day, who you can go and speak to if things are not going right. You've got the best fitness coaches, the best physios, and you don't have to do anything. Whereas yourself, when working with me at Bury Gym, is as a young lad at one club, a League Two club, for example, you've got to do jobs like you've got to get the goals out, you've got to pick bottles away, you've got to, and I think that helps you grow up quicker. It helps you become a man because things are not done for you. You actually stand on your own 2 feet. That's what I when I first left Bolton and I went into Bury as a 16-year-old. Straight away, I was in like a man's environment, which I weren't used to, and it was difficult at first, I must admit. But you know, you've got to have big shoulders, and you've got to learn very quick to grow up.
You know, it's tough, and I think that a lot of players, a lot of footballers, or they'll get released and they'll think, okay, it's, you know, it must be difficult. You've got your aspirations to play at the very highest level, and I fully appreciate that. And they've got their heart set on playing in the Premier League, and there's no greater place to be. It's the, you know, one of, if not the best league in the world, and whatever they say, it's an entertaining league. It's a great place to be, and like you said, the environment's phenomenal in the Premiership. You've got everything laid out there, and all of a sudden you're having to do goals. You're having to sort of like get the water bottles out there. You've got to muck in. And I think for me, in a way, whenever I speak to ex-managers who've coached and managed the highest level, I'm not saying we should go back to years gone by. The game's moved on. Now we've got sports science, psychology. It's never going to go back to where it was before. But I still think there's a place, David, for people and young people to learn responsibilities and jobs. And if nothing else, I think that it just gives that appreciation of the environment. And I think that it can go too much the other way, I think it can go too much the other way, where the young players have got a bit of a taste of, you know, the pitches are looked after all the time, and you want that as a professional. You want a great environment to train in. But I also think that there's a place to, for me, one of the ways around it would be to loan players out to get a taste of what it's like. First team football is huge, and that leads me to another thing I think in development, David. I think that certainly in the UK, it's changed a bit now, but I think that we don't take in consideration that players develop until a later age. And so many players, and I've argued about this for years, and I'm talking going back in the early 90s, that shows my age, but I think that when you've got players who don't develop mentally and physically, we can scientifically prove that till 23 and they're being released, how much talent, you know, goes to the wayside. And we see it. You see the Vardys of this world who've got determination. They play their way back in the game, and there's loads of them. But how many players get released and think, you know what, I'm done with it now? If they just hung in there for a bit longer, they might get through. So that's the tough thing, really. And I know that's not an easy thing to solve, but in terms of, you know, any players who get released and they don't go back into professional football, if they're a non-league club, what would you say to them, David? The young lad gets released, 19, 20 years of age, and thinks, you know what, I've got no chance of getting back in. And what sort of...
I would, I totally agree with you. You know, as you say, you know me personally. Back when I was 16-year-old at Bolton, as I say, as a youth team player, great manager. Sam Allardyce is a manager at the time. But the whole ethos in the English game at that time was to sign the biggest. We want 6'2". That's what they were looking for in the Premier League at the time. You know, I'm only still 5'7" now, so I'm a small player. So for me, they just did not see me getting in the playing the Premier League, getting in the first team in, say, 2 to 3 years. So, you know, what I would say to the people that get released at 18, 19, and as you say, they just think the world's ending, is you've got to have heroes, so to speak, and you've got to look at the likes of Jamie Vardy. You know, what an inspiration that guy is for every non-league player. And he's not the first person. The situation for me personally is scouts and you've got managers now. And they're actually going out there now, and the scouting networks are getting bigger, where they usually send them out to championship clubs, or they go to France, Spain, Belgium, for example. I'm not saying that they don't still do that. Of course they do. But Chorley on a Tuesday night, they're going out to Kettering, and you know, the scouting networks are big because they know now that out there is players that have got so much talent, but for one reason or another, mentally or physically, they've just not developed in time.
No, definitely, that's a good point. And I think for me, it's having that sort of motivation and determination to keep going. And there's no guarantees in life. It's not to say you could train every day. And I'm not one who advocates luck. I think that you make your own luck, you prepare, you work hard. But I do think that sometimes you get that rub of the green in the right place, right time. And I think for me, whilst I don't advocate on luck, you do need that bounce of the ball and injury free, and you can do the best you can. I think for me, success, David, is about being the best you can be under the circumstances. And you can't control many things. You can't control certain injuries, impact injuries. You can do your best to prepare, eat the right foods and sleep and recover, use all the best chance not to get injured. And there's so many things that also position. A club might be looking for a striker, a defender, a midfielder, and you're in. I mean, years ago when I sort of started working in conditioning, physical conditioning, and the mind in the game many years ago, I was down south in the southern part of the country, and I was working with a stable of players, and one of the lads who I was working with at the time, 1-to-1, was Carlo Nashi, and he got released, if memory serves me correct, I think from Clitheroe or something like that. And as it happens, at the time, Crystal Palace were looking for a keeper, and he just fitted the bill, and that's life, and the rest was history, so to speak. So he had that break. I mean, he'd be the first to admit that. Right time, right place. But the one that struck me about him was a sort of character, and I only knew him from doing sort of the work that we did at a time together. He was focused. He was training. He was in the gym. No matter what, he'd do the work. He'd get on with it. Quiet lad. No. Just focused on his game, and that's the thing, really. I think that sometimes players, for me, the opportunities will come along. I truly believe you're good enough, you'll get there eventually if you put your head down, you work hard. I really think that. Yeah, eventually I think that, I mean, some people make excuses, don't get me wrong, I've heard all the excuses before, and sometimes, you know what, it's luck of the draw, face isn't fit, wrong place, wrong time. But I think if you work hard eventually, and that's the toughest thing, I think that there's only so many professional players out there, David, and so many, players want to be. I mean, truly, I think that any young lad anywhere in the world, it's somewhere in their heart, being a professional footballer, being in the Premier League is got to be somewhere. I would say just about, don't get me wrong, there's other careers out there too, but truly there's no other place many people would be. On a Saturday afternoon playing in front of a crowd, it's an amazing life. And I think for me, what you said is a really important point. The top players for me, in my experience, whether they're playing non-league or Premier League, they'd be there. They love the game. And that's what I think for anyone, to love what you're doing and enjoy it. And if you do that, then see where the road takes you and go from there. I mean, recently you played your 500 league game. That's a lot of league games to play in any stretch of the imagination. That's an incredible achievement, David, and congratulations on that. You deserve every success you get. You work hard to get there. What's been your highlights in those games? What's been the highlight for you?
There's been a few. I've had a few promotions under my belt. Getting promotion to the Championship with Preston was a great achievement. Although I never got to play in the final at Wembley, which again is something that I regret. I was injured at the time, but I was part and parcel of the squad that got us there. But I think recently when I signed for Northampton, it's just as we spoke about there before. When we got promoted to the Championship at Preston, I got released from Preston and I had a couple of offers, but then Northampton came. And at first, people are saying to me, well, you've just got promoted to the Championship, one below the Premier League, and you're going to go down to League English football. Like manager, and, they're committing to give me a 3-year contract. And I've spoke to them, sat down with them. I trust them, and the vision they had to where they wanted to be, I wanted to be a part of that. And that first season, we ended up winning League Two. For the club, we won the record amount of games. We ended up winning the league, finishing on 99 points, scoring the most goals Northampton had ever scored, and you know that brought a smile to my face. That season, I played every minute of every game. So that's what I mean about sometimes you take step back to go 2 steps forwards. I'm really happy. I was really enjoying my time, and you know that's probably the biggest highlight in my career, personally, just because I took, when people doubted me why I was taking the easy option, so to speak, and dropping down a couple of levels. You know, I went there and worked hard, and I managed to play every minute of every game, and managed to win a league. And just on that point, if everyone who follows football, if you look at the manager who left Northampton and went to Sheffield United, you can just see what a job he's done. He got promoted from League One the season after, and now, you know, they're sitting top of the Championship.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's I think that two things there are important. You know, one, playing every minute of every game, and for sure, I mean, certain plays for me, you get unlucky, you get an injury, you can't control that situation for sure. But I think also preparation is key, and doing the right things, and doing recovery. And
Yeah.
for many years, having been in the game myself, and when I used to tell players, I still tell them now, don't ping balls if you haven't warmed up, and get in the swimming pool, do your ice baths, do your cryotherapy, whatever you need to do, and stay fresh. And you give yourself the best chance to play. And if you're not playing, then you're not out there, and that's the key for any player. And in terms of yourself, David, anything in training that you do to keep yourself injury free in terms of the best chance? Do you do the recovery stuff? Do you sort of
Yeah. We do like contrast bathing, hot and cold. That's hot and cold, like ice baths and a hot bath after training. Obviously, before a training session starts, we'd always have our pre-activation sessions. So this would involve like foam rolling, which is like self-massage. We'd use like glute bands to get the big major muscles switched on. As you say, we don't just go out there and kick balls straight away. We do cryotherapy every Thursday, and then obviously I do my own stuff as well, my own core work and my own like injury prevention stuff, because I've had trouble with my hamstrings and things like that in the past. So I just top up on that to keep them nice and strong. And as you say, on a Sunday or on a Wednesday after a Tuesday night game, I'll go for a walk, and I'll go and have 10, 15 minutes in the pool, you know, as you say, just to give me that extra chance to recover for the weekend. Listen, every game a footballer plays, you know, 90% of the time you're going into the game and you're going to feel something. You're not going to be 100% fresh all the time. But there's a difference between feeling stiff and being at risk of injury. And, you know, you want to go in there. If you're still a bit tight in areas, you can always get a massage, or, as I say, you can do your trigger point and stuff. But if you go in there and you know you haven't prepared properly and you're letting yourself down, most importantly, but you've got to look your teammates in the eye at the end of the game if you know deep down that you've played and you've not been 100% fit. And, you know, people who do that, you know, they won't be in the game for long.
No, exactly. That's a great point. And the young players listening, take it on board, do your recovery, do your swimming. And I think the important thing is too, you get the recovery swim done on the Sunday or midweek, you go in the next session fresher, you can put more into it. So if you get the recovery on the Sunday, then for me, it's like in the bank. And in a space of a year, you've got extra 5% you put in training on that first day back. And that's those little margins of success. I mean, I'm looking at every stone I can turn to marginalize things. And I remember a few years ago, I was chatting to, I won't, through confidentiality, breach it, but I was speaking to one of the top sports scientists in the world, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and we were talking about ways to reduce cortisol in the blood, adrenaline after Champions League games and after big games. And we looked at so many different ways, and we talked about many different ways, nutrition and recovery swimming and all those things. And I felt, for me, one thing that was being neglected a bit, in my opinion, was using the mind and getting the mind to just completely and call it meditation, call it hypnosis, whatever people want to call it. It's no different to me, but just having that time to unwind and get away from the game and let the body just heal and decompress. And do you find yourself, David, do you find that having time away from the game, obviously you've got a young family and there's your priority there as well, but do you find having some time just to yourself to unwind and switch off completely is useful? Do you prefer to train through it, or what's your way to unwind after playing night games and that sort of stuff?
Definitely, it's a great point. I mean, I do like my own time, whether it's, as I say, after a game on a Sunday or even a Tuesday night, whether it's just to go out on your own for a walk, put your headphones in, listen to something that motivates you, or relaxing music, and just try and switch off. And I'm one of the players, I actually do have difficulty with sleeping after night games, because obviously you take the caffeine drinks to keep you alert and switched on during the games, and the isotonic drinks. So after games, your body, obviously as well, you just keep going over and over the and you replay the game. Whether you win or whether you lose, you're always replaying and assessing, could I have done that or did that way. That I'm still trying to find out the best way for me is after games, when I'm finished playing at 10 o'clock, sometimes I've been up to 4 o'clock in the morning. I've had to go into training next day just for a cool and a stretch, and that can't be good for your recovery. It can't be the best way. So things I've try to do is speak to people like yourself and have breathing techniques, or as you said, just in a room and turn the telly off. Sometimes I just find what works for me sometimes is being around people after the game, say just for half an hour or an hour or so, and just chatting. My mind is switching off. I'm speaking about something else rather than going over the game in my head. So as well, but it's something that is very, very important. And, as I say, I do struggle with getting sleep after games. So
no, yeah, for sure. I think that's most players do, and one of the major reasons is, aside from everything else, is just the release of adrenaline in the system. And scientifically, I looked at cortisol levels after big games, and the levels are it's just the body's just needs time to do what the body does, recover, and like breathing is quite useful, breathing deeper, calming the sympathetic nervous system down to parasympathetic. Some players have recommended going to a room where it's just dark and no noise, and the senses are completely free, because you're always processing through your senses, so giving them a break to just decompress. And like you says there's not one thing that works for everybody. It's just finding what works for you and just adjusting it. Being around people is quite useful too. It all depends on the individual, but I think it's a combination of things. Nutrition, sleep. Some people like to listen to music. I personally find what's quite useful is being in an environment for a period of time where the senses can just come down, the body can decompress. But even then, and that's said and done, it's just the body's way. I mean, years ago, primarily, David, when we dinosaurs roamed the earth, we'd fight, flight, freeze, and any danger, and it's a similar response. It's the adrenaline, and the primal brain is as it was all those millions of years ago, the limbic part of the brain, and the only way to adjust. There's a lot of stuff out there, that's for sure, and some things work better for other people. I think for me, it's just finding it's more of an individual thing, but more importantly, that the body to recover, because then it's a race against time. And sometimes I'll hear on radio, and I work on radio, and I'll hear fans phone in and say players are tired on the weekend, and it's not just physiologically tired, it's also mentally as well. It's a little bit different, but I know people, fans are fantastic, and we wouldn't be anywhere without them in the game, for sure. And they work hard and they want entertainment, for sure. And obviously, 90-minute game of football doesn't sound, like a great deal, but the 90-minute football game, it depletes the glycogen levels nearly as much as a marathon does. And whilst it's not like a marathon intermittent, it still depletes, and there's a lot to do, recovery, for sure. But that's interesting stuff. And what I find fascinating, for me is that the levels between, say, the Premiership and, I mean, my own experience, I've had the opportunity to work at the highest level and also non-league. And for me, I'm adamant that, say, and you'll know more than me your experience of playing in FA Cup against big teams.
Yeah.
I think for me that if you take a Premier League team and say a League One or League Two team, there's not, and I've done tests with heart monitors too and that sort of stuff really to measure heart rate. There's not really as big a gap as people sort of think. I think that the gap's a lot closer. For me, the difference is that in the Premiership, you're going to get 2 or 3 outstanding players in a team that are maybe not world class, but on that periphery. And some obviously are world class for sure. And I think that's the. I reckon if you could put, say, the top 2 players in the biggest club in the country at the moment in a League One, a Championship team, they may not be successful as the other club, but they'd punch well above their weight. And what's your thoughts in terms of levels? And you know, if you took a Premier League player and put him in a League One, and if a League One, yeah.
We actually focus a lot more on this now, as you say, because of sports science has developed a lot in the game now. We've all used this, it be the Premier League or whether it be League Two, we all use the same stat base on the GPS monitors, what we all wear in training every day and what we all wear on match days. So you can't get away from it. It's a GPS system that everyone uses, and it tells you how far you've covered, how many sprints you've done, how many decelerations you've done, how long you've run at high intensity, how long you've run at very high intensity, how much distance you've covered in a game, how much distance you've covered in a half. And as you say, are just equal to Premier League levels. The Premier League players are not fitter than the players in League One, League Two, Championship. Obviously, you've got the exceptions in every single league. You've got the athletes. But for me, being a fullback, I'll cover between 10 and 11.5 kilometres every single game. And if you match that on a Champions League night tonight, you're looking at Tottenham Hotspur, Ben Davies, Trippier, whoever it might be, Carvajal for Real Madrid. They'll cover between 9.5 and 11.5k in a game. Mm-hmm. So in terms of distance covered, very, very similar. But as you say, in the Premier League, I think you've got that special talent where they've got the ability to quicker. The brain thinks quicker, and just they see pass before it, and the guy who's receiving the pass knows that the guy's playing the pass is going to do that quicker in the mind, and their ability is better than us. But I think that's why now games that go to extra.
Yeah.
A good League Two team, Championship team can set up well and structured well, then the best team in the country by a mile, I think, at the minute. And the scoring and keep clean sheet. All right, they get beat, but they go there and get that to do with obviously ability and tactical, physical attributes, or they're playing against.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's an important point. I think that the game's come a long way. You got GPS, you got ways of monitoring plays and what they've run, but for me, I think one of the things that I think is really important too is I think I wouldn't say it happens a lot, but it certainly influences signing players and decision making, and I sort of think there's certain players, and it's one of them really. I think the stats are important; they're key. But there's the other side to it too, where the human eye can pick a play, and certainly in terms of years ago, I'm not going to name the club or the players. It won't be fair to do it. But in the Premiership, there's a certain player, David, where he probably ran half the distance, compared to anybody else. But he was the most influential player in the team. He'd in the midfield, he'd tuck in the midfield and just spray balls around the park, and exactly. Exactly, and that's the thing. It's one of them where you kind of think to yourself, these days, sports science is great, fantastic, and a lot of decisions are made on the back of that. It's phenomenal. But I think there's a danger too that as much as the modern coach, the modern manager, they've taken the game in many ways. There's always that sort of the eye, and it's a game of football. It's almost like a game of chess sometimes, and that's one thing that for me, like you mentioned before about the height, there was this years ago this fascination about height, and you look at players like Messi, you look at players like Maradona, you look at players, and you wonder sometimes, David, and I know it's hypothetical, but you wonder if, say, some of these players come through our system, whether they would have been spotted, whether someone would have said, you know what, he just has the physical attributes, and that's the worrying things, And I mean, years ago, I remember this Premiership manager refused a Portuguese player called Deco, and I'm like, wow, and he must have seen something that I don't know that I didn't see, but there used to be that sort of fascination with physical attributes and athletes and whatever else, and now for me, what I'm seeing a lot in my experience is like this stats and can you do this and can you do that, and also psychological profiling too is important, but that's coming into it too. And you think, you know what, are we going to get to a stage in the game where we get too hung up on technology? And sometimes, it's one of them. You give a player a chance and see what he can do,
I think,
yeah.
but a lot of coming from the Americans, I know Brentford are doing the Moneyball, the same thing, the Moneyball, what they did in the NFL. They're signing players on the back of stats, and they're looking for people who, as you say, who with a certain height can run a certain distance, certain pace, But the biggest thing is, from playing in the game and watching a lot of football matches, you 100% spot on, Jim. You can tell a lot with your eye, and I can see whether a player has worked his socks off for the team and whether he's had a 8 out of 10 or whether he's had a 4 out of 10. You don't need to tell me, well, if his stats are right up here, well, he might have cost your game. I might have cost the team 3 points for giving the keeper a stupid back pass, for example, or not tracking a runner at that one important time, or not marking him off a set and he goes and scores, or a striker might miss 3 1-on-1s or an open net. There.
I know for sure, and that's a really good point, and you're right. And I had this conversation with one of the coaches at a couple of years ago at a conference at Brentford, and they're doing great. The staff there are great, fantastic people, and they're really useful. And some of the coaches were kind enough to come to the conference and speak about what they've got. And I wasn't being contentious. I just said, well, I think it's great that you utilize all that, and I think it's useful. It's worth a go. But the other side of it too is that we're taking away the flair, and also the machines don't tell you the play in the dressing room that everyone looks to. Who's going to stand up? The machines don't tell you when you're 2-1 down, who steps up. When you're 3-1 down, who controls the game, and that's the issue. And that's the sort of point I made at the conference when one of the lads from Brentford spoke, and I admire what they did. They do a great thing, and they're great staff. And I just said, for me, what that doesn't tell you is that the lad that when you go 1-0 down, you've battered the team, and you go 1-0 down just before half time. Who goes in the dressing room then and gets everyone going again? And they're the sort of things, you got 5 minutes to go, you're 2-0 down, you're still in the game, to stay in the game, and someone steps up, and and they're the things for me that are huge, and that's what I don't want to see go out of the game. I think that technology's got its place, but that's all it should be. It should just have its place,
I 100% agree.
Definitely, and in terms of going forward to yourself, David, I mean, you've had a great career, and your career is going to continue, no doubt. You've played against Man United as well, which would have been another amazing experience too. And amazing, really. And in terms of yourself, we talked off there about going into schools, and I think any young person would benefit so much, regardless of whether they go into football. I think whether they want to be a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whatever they want to do, I think they'd benefit from people like yourself who show determination and the mindset you need to succeed in any industry. is what you've got. And is that where you see yourself going into schools and inspiring young people
Yeah,
as well?
definitely, yeah. First and foremost, obviously, football's been my life for so long. So the opportunity, then obviously that's what I'd be looking to do. But I'm doing a degree at the minute in sports journalism. Another thing I can learn a lot from. Understand how the media work, because the media in our country, especially, I think they're the most critical. We build people up and we build our superstars up and our young talents, and we make them the best in the world. But when they fail, I think our media are the worst when they fail or when things are going bad. They just want what sells and makes them money. And, when I look at the likes of, and, for example, I think he'd be a god in any other country for what he's done. Probably in England, Man United, all-time leading goal scorer, all-time leading goal scorer. Podolski got when he retired. Got the same respect as he did from mentoring people, whether it be, as you say, businesses, but mainly in schools. I think, it really interests me giving something back to our younger generation, and just not only about sport and football, just about life, from the backgrounds that they're from, and just to tell people that every chance in life, we all get the same 24 hours in a day. It's just how we use it.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting stuff, though. That's really important stuff. And I think for me, to have someone who's sort of been there, done that, doing it, is great for them to hear from people like yourself. And like you said, I think the media, first and foremost, I guess that it is a business in a way too, and they're getting out there and they do that. Certainly where the likes of Wayne Rooney's concerned, he's a phenomenal player and he's done exceptionally well and continues to do well, and no doubt will do well in whatever he decides to do the next step. And for me, I've seen this country make big strides in sport, not just football, in sport in general. And I said a few years ago that I felt that England would win a major tournament in 15 years. I saw what was going on at the clubs. I saw what was going on at the academies. I saw what was going on at the St. George's Hall, and some great stuff. And now I'm watching and seeing some of the lads win the 17s and the 20s, and that sort of stuff, really. And without, there shouldn't be any pressure on them. They're young. They've won tournaments, and just let them play. They'll come into their own. And I firmly believe that England will win a major tournament in the next 15 years or so. It takes time, and like all things, it runs in cycles. And I think it takes investment, coaching. Also, I think one of the things, this is my opinion, I felt in this country that from a coaching point of view in academies, our hands were tied and you couldn't do as many training sessions as, say, Spain or Germany. People are not aware of that on the continent they can train more. They can train more. We couldn't train more than 2 or 3 nights a week and a weekend. It just, legislation wouldn't allow it. And I think that changes now. We'll see. I mean, England's a sporting nation, and to finish third in the Olympics was a phenomenal achievement. Or second, I should say, and to give America a good run. So England certainly plays sport across a broad range of levels, and in football, for me, we're seeing some good stuff, really. But I would certainly urge the papers and fans to take a step back, and success of the young lads that they've had in these tournaments recently. Just let them play and let them enjoy the game, and if they're given time to develop, then they're on the way. A lot can happen from that age group. And one of the things for me too, David, I felt in football that it's a contentious issue where I used to prefer players not to play for the school, and I appreciate that the players wanted to and the school wanted to play for them. And the reason being, I felt the players wouldn't benefit a great deal from playing against players that weren't at their level. And also my worry was that if they're playing school football, if a young lad's playing for a premiership team or professional team, immediately straight away players want to impose themselves on them. So I used to think to myself, you know what, in that situation, have a timeout, have a rest, do your education, or do some training that you need to improve on. And that's it's a tough call, really. I wouldn't want to deprive players from making their own decisions, but one of the things I used to sort of still do now with players that I mentor is, so, okay, if you're going to play school football, at least be mindful of how you feel, and if you're feeling burnt out, your priority in terms of being a pro is your pro club. That's the coaches. No disrespect to teachers, they do a great job, but the professional coach is a professional coach. It's what they do for a living, and that for me is key. But in terms of education, you're doing a degree yourself now, and I mean, even when you're in youth team football, David, you struck me as someone who would always want to learn new stuff, and you want them sort of players that, for me, asking questions, you want to learn, you applied yourself to education. How important do you think it is for players to learn and educate themselves academically as well?
It's massive. It's unbelievably important in my personal opinion. And I remember sitting in a dressing room at 6 who look at people about it's important to start thinking about your education now, because length of time might have been 10 years. I think the average something now is between 4 and the average professional. And I just found out an amazing stat, actually, that 2 out of 5 professional footballers go bankrupt when they finish.
Wow.
And that's because, obviously, that goes on another issue, then finances and bad investments or whatever. Education is massive, because you get a lot of free time on your hands, and I know how exhausting it is and how tiring it is physically and mentally to be a professional footballer. But we get another hour, 2-3 hours a week on something that you're really interested in, and the support that footballers get, as I say, through the PFA, as you know, is invaluable. And the professional footballers got to take advantage of that. But just the young lads who are not at that stage yet, the 15-year-olds, the 14-year-olds that are in academy level, education is massive at school. If you think that you're just going to make it, you're in the wrong mindset already. I believe, and I tell kids when I go into schools as well, is if you're the best footballer in the school, you're usually the most popular person in the school. So you should be setting an example by trying to be the cleverest person in the school as well. Because if you're the most popular, people look up to you and they want to be like you because you're good at sport and you're good at football. But also you can come back to them and teach and come back to them and say, well, not only did he go on and be a professional footballer, but he also left school with 10 GCSEs. He also went on and got an A-level, or he ended up doing a degree as well. That's what I'd always urge people, is be a role model for how good you are at your talent, but work hard in school. Even if you're not academically the best, give your best, be the best version of you, and people will respect you even more.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a good point. And I think, like you says, I mean, I wasn't aware of the stat about the bankruptcy, but certainly the amount of players who get released, and as well in youth team. And for me, it's a shame, because they still could either come back in the game. But when I used to work in the education side of things in football, I used to say to the players, if you get released, you might want to consider a scholarship in the States or something like that, where, okay, it's not playing professional, but you're playing full time, you're doing a degree, and you either come back to the UK and you get a professional job, or go back in the sports system, or you might get scouted out there. For me, and it's not what players want to hear. Obviously, the priority is but it's just having that backup plan. And sometimes, as much as we don't want to have a backup plan, and you want to go for the goal, it sort of pays, and to have that sort of plan. And I think also to grow as a person too, David. If you're studying and learning, and that's the sort of important thing for me, and we always grow on, and regardless of how long someone's career goes for, it's going to be a long time when they're not playing too, and that's a good opportunity to go into coaching, managing, sports science, or physio or business. There's so many things that afterwards they can look at doing, and it requires academia. And I think if you're doing it while you're in the game, it's probably easier than when you finish the game and starting all over then. It's not as easy then. I think that the younger you start, the easier. And, you're younger, and the young lads, and if they haven't, they're young, they're not got family when they're young, they can apply themselves. And obviously, when you get a young family, it's not as easy to study as it would be. So for sure, I would recommend young players, dedicate a few hours a week to do the GCSE, A level, BTEC, whatever, and yeah, prioritize obviously what's important to them. I don't want to tell them how to live their life, but certainly keep one eye on whether you get released, you get injured, and because it's not easy. I think that one of the things you sort of mentioned there about going to schools, I think what's difficult too is when you come out of the game, and I know when I've left sport full time to do other stuff, there's been periods I felt lost, David, because you're in this world where no one really cares or knows what you've done in the real world, so to speak, and it can be a daunting feeling. And a lot of players I've talked to tell me how the identity, from being a pro footballer and fans chanting your name every week and being in that environment, it's a family environment, albeit we all compete against ourselves. It's like a family. Then you get out of that environment, it's like, what now? You're out of the bubble, and for sure, that's a big area for me. I know the PFA, they got some great stuff. They do a good job, and I think that there's only so much they can do. For me, so that the players, reaching out and when they're at that transitional phase and getting help where they can, not to suffer in silence. Because I know there's been a few people who've come out and talked about it, but the more players who can be open about it, the better it is, and getting that help to make the transition. Not just footballers, they also any professional athlete. It's not easy transition, Yeah, not easy. We just the line's a bit crackly here, so we're sort of drawing to an end, and just want to thank you for coming on board the show. And if anyone wants to, get in touch or from a school, anything like that, they can email me. I think the line's gone off there, but it's been good of David Buchanan to come on the show. He's a fantastic lad, a great role model, fantastic role model for any footballer out there, aspiring footballer, or anyone in the game now. And we've been very privileged to have him on the show. The line seems to have gone off, but we pretty much reached the end of the show anyway. So if you're a school, anything like that, and you want some more information, then feel free to email me through. Sorry, Dave, we just lost you there, mate. And
just come back there.
Yeah, no worries. I was just saying that. I just want to thank you for coming on board the show, and we're sort of drawing towards the end. Is there anything else you'd like to add? And I just was mentioning then, if any school or anything like that is interested to speak to you further, they can shout me an email, and I can forward it on to yourself. But is there anything that you sort of want to add? Anything that's in terms of?
I just want to obviously, it's been really, really good, and obviously I like talking about my personal experiences in my own. But I just want to thank you for inviting me on. And basically, anyone who's just listening, just keep believing in yourself. And as a young person, you've obviously got a talent if you're playing football or any sport, whatever that may be, or whether you're in education, whatever you're striving to be, believe in yourself, work hard, keep your head down, and, you'll get there in the end, as we've already said. And although sometimes luck does play a part, if you're prepared once your opportunity comes along, that's the time to grab it with both hands.
Definitely, that's all any of us can do. Just get up in the morning and give life 110%. And for me, it's the days, David, when things aren't going your way. That's the true test. I mean, we can all, when things are going well, and we see that a lot in society these days. Things are going well, great. When they're not going well, that's the true test. And I think that's the important thing. Just keep going, and that's what I take a lot from sport into business and the schools, is that attitude. You know what? No matter what's happening, we keep going. We keep 100%. we don't drop our standards regardless of who we are, and for me, it's the same in sport. Whoever you play, respect them 100%, whatever level they're at, give them 100% respect and respect the opposition, the other players, no matter what level they are, regardless of whether they're Premier League or non-league, and go out there and give it 110%. That's, life in general. Never underestimate the opposition. Give them total respect and treat them. And all you can do is play at your level, and that's the key. Set the benchmark and keep going higher and higher, and see what happens. I think we all make mistakes, in life, and I think sometimes, for me, David, young footballers, this is my opinion, I think they are, and there is that responsibility to be a role model, but also they're young as well, and I think sometimes they're under so much pressure and they put a foot wrong and it's on the way. And I just, anyone watching, for me, they're like any of us when we were young, we do things and it's not easy. And bearing in mind, some of these young lads have grown up in working class environments and not had a great deal, and all of a sudden there's a lot to deal with in a short time, and under a lot of pressure and expectation, and under that spotlight week in, week out, and that sort of stuff. And whilst it's a privileged lifestyle, and I wouldn't take it for granted, and I appreciate people do some hard jobs out there and they pay good money to watch the game. Also, some of these young lads, they're young lads and they are going to make mistakes, and they need our support as much as anything else. And I think for me, on a Saturday afternoon or Tuesday evening, the fans, get behind the lads, and they're just making their way in the world too. And sometimes I think the pressure on them week in, week out, okay, they're doing what they love to do, but it's not always easy. They're human beings. They have lifestyles too, and they suffer breakups and bereavements and all these sort of things happen to them too. And when you're out there on a Saturday, it can be a lonely place sometimes, when you've got to perform and do what you can do. So that's sort of my thoughts on it, is to, for them to get the support they need to play the best football they can.
I did a piece on university about the relationship between footballers and fans, and I said more or less the same thing. My take on it is, like, as a professional footballer, you've got a responsibility to yourself and the football club for how you perform on a football pitch. Therefore, if you produce rubbish and you get beat 5-6-0 in front of your own fans at your own stadium, then you've got to expect a backlash, because for one, they see you as family and they love the football club, so it's in their heart. Like, they want the team to do well, and they're paying their hard-earned money, what they've worked really, really hard for. And as you say, some people budget to a certain number of football matches, which is acceptable. On the flip side of it, what I'll say to supporters is that as a footballer, we are only human beings. We're going to get things wrong, just like you do in your own job. You might make a mistake in work, but it might not cost your team, or nobody's watching you. But that's a limelight we've chose to, as a player, that's a limelight and the career path we've chose to go. But as you said, when the young lads especially, they find it hard to cope with, and they do need this coaching. And when they've come off, and they might have a fan give them personal abuse on their way off, and they're thinking, I've given my best today, but I just weren't good enough, and take them weeks and weeks to recover. So I was saying, for the supporters, it's all right to boo when it's going wrong, but personal abuse is unacceptable at any level. Because as a player, I don't mean to play bad, and I don't mean to make a mistake, because when I cross over that white line, I'm giving my all for the badge on the front of my shirt.
Yeah, and definitely.
Sometimes, but the good thing about football is I'm a football fan too, and I watch my team, Manchester United, or I watch England, and if I'm down with my friends, having downtime or whatever it is, if I'm wherever I am having a chat or watching the football match with my friends, I'll hear myself saying, how's he playing for Manchester United? Leaving Manchester United before him. But that's what they're saying about me. So I understand it from a fan's perspective.
Of course, yeah.
But definitely, like, I think what you're saying, the game needs more of help for players like who are definitely going through bad spells personally, because as you say, I don't know what a fan's going through in his personal life, but that fan doesn't know what I'm going through. As you say,
Of course.
I might have had a divorce, I might have money problems, I might be struggling with depression, something might have happened in my family, but I'm still expected in their eyes to go out and be this player that they see in their eyes. And sometimes it is very, very difficult.
No, for sure. I think that, it's one of them, and certainly if they put a foot wrong outside the game, and it's very heavily documented, and sometimes the media, and I know from personal experience, distorts the truth. It's just the way it is. I know they've got an agenda to report what's going on. I know from full experience, and I've read stuff in the papers before, and I've seen stuff, and it hasn't been. You don't get the full picture at all, really, and I know how players certainly do suffer sometimes, and they're human, and especially the younger ones who are making their way in the game. All of a sudden, it's like they go from being a hero to having everyone, and it's a true testament. We've seen players who've bounced from that, and any young players who get that. For me, just keep focused, and you'll win the fans round, and the most important thing is just be true to yourself, and do it for yourself too. That's the key for the young players. To just keep focused, and that's the best you can do, and that brings a lot of pressure too, because obviously the players want to do well. Players want to win. They want to win as much as anybody else, if not more. And I've seen players like yourself, David, train. No one could imagine how hard you train and have been training for all those years and put the effort in. And I know full well that I don't think I'm out of play in about, since I've been in this game at a level of professionalism since the mid-90s. I don't think I've met a player in my life that doesn't want to win or doesn't give 100%. You might get the odd person here or there, but it's few and far in between. I'd say 99.9% of players go out there to win, and they give it their best shot. But like everybody else, they have out of form, they have personal things that go on, and that sort of stuff for me. And I think for the young player, that's one to take into consideration. It's a journey. You just got to keep focused. And also, the game's come a long way. There's people now, and I speak to clubs now, and I see people who've got roles in psychology now, and some great people, who do some great work. And for sure, the young players, if you got a psychologist or a performance coach at the club, then don't see it as weakness if you need to speak to them, because then they can point in the right direction, whether it's performance goal or if you need help away from performance, and they can sort of guide you in the right way, and never suffer in silence. It's not a good place to be, because it can be a lonely world for sure. And any player, don't see it as a weakness if you need help. Like anything else, if you get an injury, you break a leg, you go to A&E, it's fine. No one says anything. If you got diabetes and no one, but if you got something in here that's not going well in the mind, there's still a bit of stigma with people afraid to admit it. But for me, the mind's got trillions of cells, and things can go wrong here based on a number of things. And one of the best ways forward is to communicate to the right people to get the right help. But it's been great having you on the show, David. Fantastic. No doubt we'll get you back on again sometime, and definitely, keep in touch, and all the best for the rest of the season. Thanks again, David.
Oh, thank you very much, Jim. Take care.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.